G'day everyone, this is Cameron from QAV. Today I'm going to walk through a little video where I show you how to get started using the simple version of the checklist, the CR version of the checklist, the baby steps version, the training wheels version, the one stock at a time version, and how to fill it out using a free source of data like Yahoo Finance for people that don't yet have a Stock Doctor subscription, either because they're just getting started, getting their toes wet, getting a feel for it, not ready to commit the extra $150 a month or whatever it is for Stock Doctor, or maybe you're based in a non-Australian geography and Stock Doctor is no good for you, so you're using other data sources. So I'm going to try and remember how to do this. It's been a couple of years since I've had to do something without Stock Doctor, so fingers crossed I'll be able to remember how I did it early on. First thing to do is to get the simple version of the checklist to use. So go up to our website, QAV, go to the club member section, club member resources. It'll bring you to this page here. Scroll down to the club member links and you want to go here to the QAV checklist and download this thing here, the CR version of the checklist. By the way, whilst you're on the club member resources page, also you're going to want this, the Getting Started Guide, aka the Bible, because that's where all the good stuff is. And you're going to want to follow along with this, particularly this section down here when we start to go through the cells one by one and explain what they are. Page 26 it is. Anyway, so I'll assume you've got those open in front of you, and let's pop over to the spreadsheet. This is what it looks like as of today. And I think I'll just start with this stock up the top here, BPT, Beach Energy, because it happened to be our stock of the week this week. So what we're going to do is, we'll ignore these. These should roughly be the same if they're up to date. It's just links to their website, their ASX page, Google News, doing a news search on them. The Stock Doctor link, which won't be of any use to you if you don't have Stock Doctor. You can replace this with a Yahoo Finance link or something if you want. And we'll start with column F, the last analysis date, which is basically just today. What day did you look at this last? So I'm going to put in today's date. So when I come back and look at it a month or two or three from now, I will know when it was the last time I looked at it. Now we want to start going from column G onwards. Period end date. Period being when was the last time they reported financials. Now I'm recording this obviously on the 21st of January. There will be new half-yearly figures coming out, but as of today, most companies haven't done their half reporting, so the last results are going to be the end of the last financial year. But we'll pop over to Yahoo Finance. I'm going to search for BPT. BPT, baby, you know me, but you need to put in the .ax to specify that you want the Australian BPT and not a BPT on another index. So we want to go look at their financials. So I'm going to go over to the Financials tab and click that. And we can see that the last reported financials were for the end of June 2021. So pop back to my spreadsheet and I'll just say it's June 21. And now, straight off the bat, we want to check the sentiment, because if it has dodgy sentiment, we will not go any further. So I will go and have a look at its chart. Now, I filled this in earlier to save a little bit of time. I've drawn some buy and sell lines here. So this is the current sell line. It's not exactly accurate if I pull this down. First of all, you want a 5-year monthly chart, as you know. And kind of a problem with Yahoo Finance getting 5-year monthly charts. This one obviously goes back to 2002. If I click on the 5-year thing here, it gives me the 5 years, but it puts the interval at a week. If I change the week to a month, it gives me more than 5 years. So that's not great. I might be able to get in there and do it manually. But I know that 5 years from January 22 is January 2017. So we're starting around about here. To draw the sell line, we were looking for the lowest point, which is here in June of 17, lowest point in the 5-year period, that is. And for the current sell line, I'm going to go over and find the lowest trough to the right for my L2, or low number 2, which seems to be here in August 21. So that's my current sell line here in red, and we can see that the share price is currently above that, so that's good. I need to then do a buy line. Before I do a buy line, I want to see when my most recent sell was. So my most recent sell, if I use the same L1, June of 17, and I look for the lowest trough to the right before the current lowest trough, it would have been here, October 20. And if I draw a line between those 2 points, it would have crossed over here in April 21. So that would have been the last sell event. It would have had another sell here too, and then another sell here. But this is the main one, I guess. If we'd owned it, we would have sold, which means when I'm drawing the buy line, I'm starting H1 is the high point on the graph, which is here in January 20, and I'm going for the next highest point on the right, the furthest high peak to the right, that is, and that's going to be this one here in September of 21, which comes after the last sell event. It also came back down and crashed here, which is potentially another sell, but I think it's fine as it is. So that means, because it wouldn't have been a buy, we wouldn't have had to sell it then. It wouldn't have been a buy until here, just in January 21, it's become a buy again. So I'm happy to say that that is a buy, and it's a recent buy too. So going back to my list here, it gives it a 2. Still got a 2 for a positive sentiment, but I'm going to give it a 1 here too for recent positive upturn, which, as you can see, if you go to the Bible, recent positive upturn is a recent upturn since the last financial results, which we know were at the end of June 21. So that's good. Now I need to get into these other columns, the financial data. Let's start with net operating cash flow, column J. Going to go back to the Beach Energy here, and I'm going to go back to my financials. And I'm looking for cash flow. Now you see under the financials here, it's got 3 tabs: income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. And I want it to be annual too. I want the annual numbers, not the quarterly numbers. We're trying to get it for the last 12 months. As of the last financials, what were the 12-month financial reporting was. So we'll go over to cash flow here to get the net operating cash flow. And this is the number that we're looking for here. Cash flows from used in operations. You can ignore all the other lines. If you drill down into this one, you can see that it shows cash flow coming in, 1.611600, and these numbers are in thousands, so it's $1.6 billion. And cash payments to suppliers, their outgoings, 692,600. So can collapse those again. Just looking at cash flow from operations, the net operating cash flow was 759,800, but in thousands, so 759.8 million. So I can pop over to here and I'll paste that in. Better put a couple of zeros, 3 more zeros in here too. So there you go. Net operating cash flow, 759.8 million. Right, next thing we need to answer is how many shares are on issue. Pop back to Yahoo Finance. And this time I'm going to go to statistics. And I'm going to scroll down here and look for shares outstanding. 2.28 billion shares outstanding. So I will pop over to Excel. 2.28 2.28 billion. Is that what it said? 2.28 billion. Right. Cash per share is going to be calculated automatically taking these two numbers. Okay. Share price 1.43. I can copy and paste that. Oh, okay, we'll just go down here, which means we have a price to cash ratio, which is automatically calculated. The green cells are automatically calculated. 4.29. Okay, moving right along. Is the price per share divided by the cash per share less than 7? And this is also automatically calculated using the numbers that have just gone through there. You see there's a formula up here. And yes, price divided by cash is 4.29 less than 7. So it gets a 2 for that. We're already scoring it as we go. Dividend yield. All right, well, we're going to need to go back to Yahoo. And if we scroll down here, I think we'll find, here we go, dividends and splits. The trailing annual dividend yield, 1.36%. So we can copy that and we'll put that in here. Is the dividend yield higher than the mortgage rate? Right, so the mortgage rate, you're going to have to make sure that's current in this cell up here. This one says 4.25%, but that's obviously a couple of years old. In my checklist at the moment, I'm using 3.42, so let's use that for today. All right, so is the dividend yield higher than the mortgage rate? It's not. 1.36 is not higher than 3.42, so it doesn't get a score for that. Moving along, we want to find out what the price to earnings ratio is. So we go back to Yahoo Finance. And if we scroll back up to the top, we can see that the trailing price to earnings ratio is 8.62. So we'll go back over to here and type in 8.62. So is it less than the yield? No, and it's getting a blank for that. Because the Bible says if it's a negative, if the answer is no, it just gets a blank. We don't penalize it for that, but it gets a bonus point if the PE is less than the yield. So now we want to answer column T. Is it the lowest PE in the last 3 years? This is a manual check. We want to see if the PE is the lowest in the last 6 halves or the last 3 full years. Now, unfortunately, Yahoo Finance doesn't seem to have this kind of data readily available. So I'm going to go to Trading Economics and I'm going to search for BPT, Beach Energy, AU, that's it. I'm going to scroll down to this financials section here and I'm going to look for price to earnings. And if we go back over the last 6 halves, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so the current PE up here, is it the lowest? Nope, that is. Is it the highest? Nope, that is. So on our chart, on our checklist, sorry, it gets a 0. It's neither the lowest nor the highest. Right, now we want to find out what the net equity is. If we go to the Bible, you can see that the net equity it's in the balance sheet as total assets less total liabilities. So I'll go back to Yahoo Finance, go to Financials, Go to the balance sheet. This is the current or the most recent reporting period. Total assets, total liabilities, and the net is 3 billion. I'll copy and paste that in. Add some zeros. Okay, now we want to answer this question. Does the company have a consistently increasing equity? Well, let's have a look, huh? So, last financial period, it was 3.087 billion, 2.819 billion, 2.374 billion, 1.838 billion. So, yes, it does. That has been going up consistently. We can give it a 1. Share price has been copied over from earlier, and this is auto-calculated. Our net equity per share, aka our book value, is 1.35. Is the share price less than that? No, it's not. Gets a blank here. The price to book ratio is automatically calculated. Is the share price less than 30% above NEPS? Gets automatically calculated, and it is, so it's giving a 1 here. Earnings per share, we're going to need to find that out. So we'll go back to Yahoo Finance. I think we'll find it in statistics. Scroll down here to diluted EPS. It's TTM. So it's okay, I guess. That's trailing 12 months. We'll grab that and put that in. Future earnings per share. We don't have Stock Doctor, so we can't answer the question about its current intrinsic value. But if you go back to Yahoo Finance and you scroll down on the right-hand side here, you can see these recommendation sections. Analyst price targets. 13 analysts covering it. And you can see that the average price, what they think the intrinsic value is $1.64. So we can copy that and paste it in. Not Stock Doctor's current intrinsic value, but it's the analyst's estimate, or the consensus value is what we'd call it. Actually, Stock Doctor don't have a intrinsic value anymore themselves. They're using a consensus value, so I should change the wording on this. If we go back to see how that compares, our IV number 1 is 71 cents. Our IV number 2 is 281. This is somewhere in between those. But the share price is currently below the consensus valuation. Now, is the financial health from Stock Doctor stable, increasing, etc.? You're not going to be able to answer this if you don't have Stock Doctor. So we can delete that. There is a way of putting together your own estimate, which I'm not going to go into in this video. We've talked about it on the podcast before, but I might do a separate video on how to do that at some point. Is the CEO or board member a founder? Do they have a lot of stock in the company? Well, we're going to need to find out. If we go over to Yahoo Finance and we click the holders section, and you go to inside a roster here, you can see the executives and what their shareholdings are. Now, we know this is a little bit out of date because Matt Kay resigned as CEO a couple of months ago, and I think Engelbrecht is currently the interim CEO. Not exactly sure what happened to Matt Kay's shares when he left, but if you add all these up, it's roughly like 5, 6, 7 million shares out of the, 2.2 billion shares that they have. It's not really going to be higher than 5 or 10% that we use as the benchmark. Let's see, executive holdings, 10% or more is a yes, is the current thinking around here. Now, Tony did say in his deep dive on BPT the other day that Kerry Stokes, through his entity, has about 30% of the company. So and has some board seats. So technically this could be a 2 for a yes, but I think Tony said Stock Doctor didn't report that accurately either, and it got a 0. It didn't make a lot of difference. Does it have a qualified audit? Well, to check that, you need to go to their website, look at their last financials, and check to see if there's a mention of a qualified audit. I don't need to show that on video, but I know in the case that in their case, it doesn't. And it's not a commodity sell. We know that. So we end up with a 10 out of 13 score, 77%, and a QAV score of 0.18, which is above our 0.1 score that it needs to be in order to be a buy. So in this case, that would be a buy. Now, when we did the official QAV checklist at the beginning of the week, it got a score of 0.20, which is pretty close. So considering that we've left out a couple of things like the financial health from Stock Doctor and the star stock from Stock Doctor, we've ended up with a relatively close score. And of course, if you're only using these free sources, you're going to skip those things every time anyway, unless you're coming up with a way of creating your own financial health rating. But what you're trying to do, of course, is stack rank. It doesn't really matter if your score is exactly the same as the score that we get on Stock Doctor either. What we're trying to do is stack rank the stocks that we're looking at based on the data that's available to us and buying the ones with the highest score. So I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, shoot me an email. You know where to find me via the website.